war is supposed to be the domain of calculated strategy, disciplined execution, and hard-nosed decision-making. Generals spend years studying tactics. Governments pour fortunes into intelligence networks. Soldiers train until their bodies give out. And yet, scattered across the entire sweep of military history are moments so catastrophically stupid that no amount of training or money could possibly explain them. Here are some of the dumbest military screw-ups ever recorded.
The War of the Oaken Bucket. In 1325, the city-states of Bologna and Modena were already hostile neighbors in northern Italy when a group of Modeni's soldiers raided a Bolognese well and stole an oak bucket. Bologna demanded it back. Modena refused. Bologna declared war. What followed was the Battle of Zappolino, in which roughly 32,000 Bolognese soldiers marched against Modena to recover stolen wooden property. Modena won the battle decisively and kept the bucket. It is still on display in Modena today, locked inside the Ghirlandina Tower, which is arguably the pettiest trophy case in European history. Bologna never got the bucket back. Thousands of men fought and died over a well bucket because two city governments were too proud to back down from an argument that started with petty theft.
The Charge of the Light Brigade. The Charge of the Light Brigade is remembered as an act of extraordinary courage. What it actually was is an act of extraordinary miscommunication. During the Battle of Balaclava in 1854, British commander Lord Raglan issued an order for cavalry to pursue retreating Russian artillery. The officer who delivered the order, Captain Louis Nolan, pointed vaguely in the wrong direction when asked to clarify. Lord Lucan, commanding the cavalry, looked at the gesture and concluded he was being ordered to charge directly at a heavily fortified Russian artillery position at the far end of a valley, flanked by enemy guns on both sides. He passed the order to Lord Cardigan, who personally hated Lucan and was not about to question anything that might make Lucan look bad. 673 men rode directly into a kill zone. Over 100 were killed, and nearly 200 more were wounded or had horses shot from under them. The Russians were so confused by what they were watching that some accounts suggest they initially thought the British cavalry must be drunk. The entire catastrophe traced back to a vague hand gesture.
The Red Trousers Scandal. The French army entered the First World War wearing bright red trousers. This was not an accident or a supply failure. It was a deliberate political decision. In 1911, the French military had actually proposed switching to less visible gray-blue uniforms after watching how badly bright colors performed in recent conflicts. The proposal was killed in Parliament. A former minister named Eugene Etienne reportedly declared that eliminating the red trousers would be contrary to French taste and to military function. France marched into 1914 in uniforms that made their soldiers visually distinct targets against almost any background. In the opening weeks of the war, French casualties were catastrophic, with some estimates placing losses at over 300,000 men killed in August and September of 1914 alone. The red trousers were eventually replaced. Nobody apologized for the delay.
The disaster at Bari. During the Second World War, the United States Army Air Forces conducted one of the most destructive friendly fire incidents in military history at the Battle of Bari in 1943, though the screw-up in question belongs entirely to the Allied command structure. A German air raid on the port of Bari, Italy, on December 2, 1943, sank 17 Allied ships in the harbor. Among the destroyed vessels was the American cargo ship SS John Harvey, which was secretly carrying 2,000 mustard gas bombs that nobody at Bari had been told about. The resulting explosion released the gas across the harbor and into the city. Allied commanders, aware of the secret cargo, initially refused to tell doctors treating the wounded what the victims had been exposed to. Soldiers and sailors died from mustard gas poisoning, while medics treated them for conventional injuries. A classified report was filed. The incident was suppressed for decades. The men who died did so partly because their own command structure prioritized secrecy over their survival. The Italian invasion of Greece in 1940 is one of the most complete strategic humiliations of the Second World War. Benito Mussolini, jealous of Hitler's rapid conquests, decided to invade Greece without informing his German allies and without conducting serious logistical planning. He reportedly told his generals the campaign would be over in 2 weeks. The Italians invaded through Albania in October 1940. The Greeks counterattacked within days and drove the Italian forces back into Albania, capturing significant territory. The invasion that was supposed to take 2 weeks turned into a grinding stalemate that Italy could not resolve. Hitler was furious. Germany was eventually forced to divert significant military resources to bail out the Italian campaign, which historians have argued delayed the German invasion of the Soviet Union by several critical weeks. Some scholars believe that delay contributed to Germany failing to capture Moscow before winter. Mussolini's impatience and refusal to plan properly may have altered the entire trajectory of the Eastern Front.
Korean Airlines Flight 007. The Soviet Air Defense Forces shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007 in 1983 after tracking it for over 2 hours and concluding it was a military spy plane. The aircraft was a civilian Boeing 747 carrying 269 passengers and crew, including United States Congressman Larry McDonald of Georgia. Soviet pilots reported seeing navigation lights, which military aircraft typically do not use on covert missions. The tracking radar showed the plane following a steady, predictable flight path at commercial cruising altitude. The pilot who fired the missiles, Major Gennady Osipovich, later admitted in interviews that he had seen those navigation lights. He followed his orders anyway. None of this prompted anyone in the Soviet command chain to suggest they might be looking at a civilian airliner. The plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. All 269 people aboard were killed. A Soviet investigation later acknowledged internally that the identification had been botched, though public admissions took years. The incident became one of the defining moments of Cold War tension and led directly to the United States opening GPS technology for civilian use, so that navigational errors like the one that put Flight 007 off course could be avoided in future.
The Battle of Isandlwana. The British military managed to lose an entire war in 1879 to a force with no artillery, no rifles, and no formal military training in what became known as the Battle of Isandlwana. A British column of roughly 1,300 soldiers, plus several hundred African auxiliaries, set up camp at the base of a rocky hill in Zululand without conducting basic defensive preparations. They did not form a defensive perimeter. They did not laager their wagons. The officer in command, Lord Chelmsford, divided his force and personally led half of it away from camp to chase what turned out to be a diversion. A Zulu force of approximately 20,000 warriors then hit the camp from multiple directions. The British ran short of ammunition, partly because the quartermaster was reluctant to break open reserve supply boxes without proper paperwork authorization during an active battle. Over 1,300 men were killed. It remains one of the worst defeats in British colonial military history, and part of the reason it happened was that someone was worried about the correct forms for ammunition distribution while the camp was being overrun.
These disasters share a common thread that has nothing to do with the enemy: buckets and bureaucracy, vanity and vague hand gestures, secrecy that killed the people it was supposed to protect. The most dangerous force on any battlefield has occasionally been the command structure itself. Armies have spent centuries perfecting ways to defeat each other. They have been considerably less consistent at getting out of their own way.